Welcome to our panel. I'm Trilce Navarrete, and I am, just taking over from Sheila, the special interest group on metrics and evaluation. And every year we try to organize a panel on this subject. And what's funny is that if you look at the program, I will say about half of I haven't counted them yet, but just on a quick feeling, I believe that half of the presentations have something to do with evaluating the work. Because eventually, what we want to do is improve the work. So, how do you do that? Evaluating what you did in the past and then trying to make some improvement. So on that idea, we decided to bring some of the experience from different places together and present this panel. But before I say that, let's see. I'm working in the Netherlands, and I wanted to share just some of the last data that we just got from a survey in 2012. We surveyed about 800 museums, and they said that 70% of their collections are digitized. That's a lot. 62% of their collections have been photographed. You have to remember actually on that 70% collections are digitized. Not everybody wants to digitize everything. There's, for instance, the Natural History Museum that have drawers and drawers and drawers of little stones. Not everything needs to be digitized. Or the Money Museum that have drawers of coins. Not all coins are very nice. Some of them are glued together, and they're not very nice to photograph. So not everything needs to be digitized. But so that 70% is pretty high. However, only 25% of collections are available online. That's very little. However, if you consider that less than 10% are available for visitors, in the galleries, well, then the 25% doesn't look so bad. But still, most museums show between 6 to 10% of their collections on their floors, on the exhibition floors. Something important is then to say, okay, we've been digitizing for about 30 years. We've got some idea on what we're doing. However, we still need to understand and improve our work. We're doing the best, how can we improve? No? So almost half of museums in the Netherlands are starting to gather some sort of data, maybe online use. So maybe is it web clicks or visitor numbers or the time spent, or everybody sort of gathers something else. What they do with that is not very clear. And actually something very important, a number of museums gather information, and they have Google Stats or they have other forms, and they don't know what to do with them. So this is still sort of an area that needs growing and learning. However, interesting, more than half of museums do have a digital plan. So, okay, they have a plan, but they don't really evaluate what's going on, or at least, not in the way that you will expect. You will expect that I guess maybe it's best practice. We should see what the rest of the conference says about what's the best way to go about evaluating the work. But in general, you would expect that if you have collections online, if you want to improve your work and you have a strategy on how to go about that, you will build in already some form of evaluation or some form of checking. Okay, are we doing the best? Are we doing the right thing? I think the future key question is, okay, we're talking about digital heritage. We're talking about online heritage use. That is a different type of use of our heritage. It's not something that we are used to measuring. So we actually do need to develop new forms of measuring and new forms of performance indicators, like what do we want to measure and what does that mean? Only web visits or the duration of the web visit perhaps is not enough. We've seen a number of examples where people say, okay, our project put digital collections available in one or other way, and people are interacting with this content. How do you measure that? What kind of access is that, and what kind of engagement is that? So I think First, then we need to identify what is use of heritage and what is engagement, I guess. And second, we need to define the new relevant metrics. Somebody mentioned in a panel earlier that evaluation is not sexy. It's always really difficult to find the resources and people around you and the encouragement to evaluate exactly what you're doing. However, we have here 3 examples. We'll start with Sheila presenting on the Canadian example on what are they doing with their visitor feedback. Then we'll have an example from Italy. Irene will present about what they do on actually as visitors on site but working online, which is really nice because it's not the online-offline dichotomy. I mean, it's just like digital heritage is together with everything else. And then the last example is from the Tate. Elena will be presenting on what does Tate do with their multiple sources of user data. What we thought is that then the 3 presenters will do their presentation. If you want to hold on your questions until the end, then we'll do a final discussion on everybody. Okay, so I'll give the word to Sheila. Let's see. Oops. Okay. Where do you have? Oops. No, sorry. This one? This one. Yeah. Okay. You got it. Yes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the introduction. Yes, I'm Sheila Carey from Canadian Heritage Information Network. And just a little bit, I know that some of you are familiar with CHIN. But for those of you who are not familiar with CHIN, we have 2 main areas of focus. One is on professional development resources for museum professionals working with digital content. And the other area of focus is on presentation of this digital content. And we present this content on the Virtual Museum of Canada site. And that is through an investment program, which is it goes through an editorial board that is not, it's external people. The Virtual Museum of Canada, or VMC as we call it for short, actually has several types of content. There's a teacher center, there's an image gallery which draws images from our national collections inventory called Artifacts Canada. There is a section with Canadian museum listings. And there are virtual exhibits of 2 kinds. The ones I'll be talking about will be these main larger online virtual exhibits, but we also have several hundred small local community exhibits as well. To start with, this is a question that we're always trying to figure out. It's not always clear what our users are trying to do on our site, even when you look at search terms and your web stats. And I always like this quote from these usability experts on the questions that users ask tells us what kind of task they were trying to do. Sometimes it's because the task wasn't successful, but anything that they provide us in this way is useful information. So the methodology, we have been cataloging feedback messages since 2001 when the VMC was launched. They get cataloged into a database called QDA Minor, and it is connected with statistics programs called SimStat. And the cataloging has been somewhat inconsistent over the time, I would say, because we've had various different people cataloging it. Sometimes it has been students, sometimes it's been added on to someone's job as an extra and maybe sort of the last thing they get to. So over the years, the quality of the cataloging hasn't been consistent, but we have amassed a huge amount of data in this time. So I extracted all of these feedback messages from the database, and I looked through every one several times in many cases because I was refining the initial categories that we had. I used 2002 as a baseline year when I started looking into the details because for 2001 we didn't have a full calendar year of data. The VMC only launched in March. Okay, so there were 2 questions I had. One was, Can I tell from the tone in the messages whether people's content or whether people's attitudes to the content has changed? And then also from what people are actually saying or asking in the message, can I tell if what they're doing is the same, and if not, how that's changed over time? Also, one thing that I had to keep in mind when trying to figure out what these results mean, and I can't say that I have actually figured out exactly what they mean, because of course I don't have the users to go back to and ask, is that this whole context that we're operating in has changed a lot. There's a lot more content online, not just on the VMC, and that is an issue that I kept in mind too, that these feedback messages, there's more content as we went along. There's also more content out there just in the general museum environment, and in, of course, the broader internet context, that there's a lot more content. People are getting more sophisticated in knowing how to search for what they want. We've also gotten better at bringing our users to our content through things like meta tags and coming up with good descriptions and that sort of thing. And also, one thing I want to make sure to point out is that the social media has definitely changed the landscape in how users use online content. So just a quick look at the coding that these messages go through. One thing to keep in mind that when you're looking at feedback is you are looking at a self-selecting audience. So you're looking at people who have opted to fill in your little feedback form and send you a message. The other thing is that when we're looking at the coding and the variables, some of them are very easy to determine because you can look at them and immediately know. The user may tell you they're a teacher, or they may tell you that they're looking for something for their classroom. You can look at the message right away and tell the language of the user. But some of the things are a little bit more difficult to figure out, and so that's fairly qualitative and subjective in some cases. So those are the sort of parameters of this. I realize that's very small, but I won't be staying on this slide for long. The little image is how I often felt, because I felt like I was in a sea of data, which was feedback messages. And the biggest thing I noticed when I looked over time is that in the extremes, those numbers have changed a lot, and we've started to get a bigger number of these neutral messages. And one thing about the extremes, the negative and the positive, is that sometimes the people are, I shouldn't say sometimes, they're usually very motivated to send you a message, because if it's a negative message, they're very annoyed with you. And if it's a positive message, they're delighted with you. And one thing I did notice is that in a lot of the early feedback, you got a lot of messages that were just telling you, this is great, I love that I found this. And I think my interpretation of that is that early on, people were more surprised to find this kind of internet content, whereas now people sort of take it for granted. And the neutral messages, why we're getting more of them, I'm not really sure why that is, but I found that as I started to look, I thought the neutral messages were actually a source of more information, because the negatives did tend to separate into, we don't like this, or we wish you had this instead, or something doesn't work, fix it. And then the positives, as I said, tended to be, oh, I love that I found this. So looking at the neutral messages, we had user roles from 2009 on that were identified at the time of cataloging. But I also found that I wanted to go back and create some new types to break down these user roles a bit more. One thing that jumped out to me right away is that people who are searching, asking questions, looking for content, there's a big increase in that compared to the early messages. Also the content collectors, and this didn't surprise me at all, because people are much more prone or likely to look for content to use in some other way. A category that surprised me to see was shoppers and tourist travelers, because these exhibits are standalone. In some cases, they're hosted on the VMC, or in other cases, they're on a museum's exhibit, but they are intended as standalone content. So changes over time. You can see that the searcher-researcher category has expanded a lot, as has the content collector. And just move on. So for comparison, I haven't seen other long-term studies of feedback messages in the museum context, but I'm always interested in anything else I can find on visitors to museum sites. And the Culture 24 Action Research Project report, the second one, was just published recently. And as part of that project, they had an online survey that had one question. I think the actual questions, I think, were initially used in Indianapolis. So I thought it would be interesting to compare these type of motivations to the ones that we were seeing in our feedback messages. Not surprisingly, because these were two museum sites as opposed to this little section, which is a virtual exhibit. Plan a visit to a museum is a very common type that we didn't necessarily see in exhibits, although we did sometimes see those. In fact, when we saw them, sometimes we saw that somebody was annoyed that they couldn't easily find out how to get to the museum. So that's kind of feedback that we're keeping in mind for our investment program. Okay, and also making a transaction that was present in our shopper category. Okay, so my flood of feedback messages, going a little deeper into some of these categories, what did it tell me and what kind of might we be able to advise other museums on from this? So searchers, one thing, it's actually this general information kind of search, and these are questions that we call general because they're not necessarily, the person may not really be in the right place. So this person is somebody wanting to know how to make a pair of snowshoe frames. We also get, there are a couple of exhibits that have the word immigration in the title. And so we get some general messages that are just saying, how do I immigrate to Canada? So I'm actually seeing it as a good sign that these general information questions have decreased because I think maybe users are getting directed to the right content that they should be at. We get some questions that I call site-specific, and I broke those down. Sometimes I may have broken things down a bit more in detail than I needed to, but it was easier once I was going through them to break them down and then collapse them back if I wanted to do that. So site-specific questions are where people had an issue with something or they can't figure out how something works. And as someone who does the usability for our products, it's very useful to get this kind of information. And then we get these expert advice types of questions where some people offer to send you an image of something that they would like to have identified. So one of the things I would say is if you're a museum, and I know some museums do have occasional days where you can come in and have something identified, if you are offering some kind of ask an expert service, the types I saw most often were on the exhibits that were scientific. There were also people looking for appraisals and authentications of artwork, but that may not be something that museums want to encourage as much. But I would also advise you, if you are having an Ask an Expert service, make sure that people can find it. And this is a good example. We see lots of examples of people writing in and asking for identification of mushrooms. And when I looked at this exhibit, The Fungus Among Us, I can see why, because I see this listing of many mushrooms and then the word identification is all over the place. Not really recycling, but I liked the symbols. So content collectors, lots of those. In some cases, it will be people looking for photos of something that they didn't find on the site, but they know they're in the right place where somebody might be able to tell them where they could find something else related. We also have a scavenger hunt, and one thing is interesting in that this is from 2001. The scavenger hunt is quite old. Teachers continue to love it, and they continue to send in requests to get the answers to the quiz on it. So I think sometimes, in spite of the fact that a lot of museum content or museum objects tend to be older in nature, we often think that our older content isn't still valuable to users, and that's not true. It may need technical upgrades, but it can still be valuable. And then we do get a lot of people asking for permission to use something, and how to attribute it. I did see a lot of citation questions as well, so I think we can do a better job in leading users to the information on how to make use of this content if they would like to, and what the rights and restrictions are. Exit through the gift shop. I don't think I have ever been to a physical Blockbuster exhibit that you did not exit through a gift shop. And I did see enough questions about this that it interested me, mostly in the art content, especially Emily Carr. The Canadians will know why that would be a common question. But some scientific things as well. So if you are creating online content that you do happen to have a way to provide users to purchase, it's not you don't want to throw it in their face constantly, but it's not a bad idea to somehow connect that. Here's how you could buy a print, if you think that visitors might actually be looking for that. I think people were searching something like Emily Carr prints because they wanted to buy them, and they end up at the site itself, but it was the case with other content as well. Share your story. This is a smaller category in these exhibits than it is in our community memories exhibits. We get their local history exhibits. They're very place-oriented, and we get a lot of people writing in and wanting to tell us their story. Sometimes, like in the case of this writer from the Yukon, they would like to share their poetry on their fall moose hunt. And then you have Sable Island, which is, I don't know if people are familiar with it, it's off the east coast of Canada. It is very limited in ability to take visitors. It's been a natural preserve for years. It's now under Parks Canada. Access to it is very restricted. It has shown up from time to time as suddenly getting a boost in popularity because there are documentaries about it, and apparently it was in the movie Perfect Storm, or a reference to it is in The Perfect Storm. But so we get a lot of questions about Sable Island and comments about it, people sharing information about Sable Island. Just to finish, just because you're not hearing feedback from users doesn't mean that everything is good, and it doesn't mean it's bad. This is showing a little raging storm of people outside because I don't know if you can read that, but it says, "I think our users are happy. I haven't had any complaints so far." That's not necessarily true, but on the other hand, we found out with an exhibit this summer, which was on forensics, and in the entire time, I went back and counted, in the entire time it had been online back to the 90s. It was one of our early exhibits. We had received 25 feedback comments. We took it down to fix it because it was old and inaccessible, and there were things that we could fix. And since then, we've had about 3 times that comments just in the span of 3 months, asking where it is it coming back from teachers saying, "I use this every fall in my classroom." So that's just a cautionary note that just because you're not hearing from your users doesn't mean that they're not liking your content. And actually, this was pretty high in visitor statistics anyway. So just to close, searchers, those people who are asking questions and looking for things, make sure you're bringing your users to the right content. And so if you're not planning to run information on citizenship and immigration, then don't put immigration in a title maybe, or just think about how you use that content. If your content becomes outdated, keep it current. We do get a lot of feedback from users just giving us content updates. If you're offering expert advice, make it sure that the users are going to find that. Make your usage rules and restrictions clear. If you have content related to an exhibit for sale, make it easy for shoppers to find it. Certain topics do lend themselves well to sharing, especially location-based type of topics, so not just the local history ones, but we get information on Sable Island, as I mentioned, and other exhibits that are kind of location-based. Generally, users may be helping you identify usability issues. Make sure your visitors online can figure out how to find you. And keep an eye on what topics become popular at certain times, because, as I said, some of these things pop up in the media, and if you can not reorganize your whole site around it, but if you can promote it on your social media because it's timely, then that's something worth thinking about as well. So that's it for me, and thank you.
So, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Irene Rubino. I'm currently research assistant at the Polytechnic of Turin. And as part of my research program in pervasive computing, I'm trying to understand how digital technologies can impact visitors' experiences. And today, I would like to share with you a case study which is based on the analysis of the digital comments that were posted by the visitors of Palazzo Madama, Museo Civico d'Arte Antica, which is an historic building and civic museum located right in the city center of Turin, which is located in the northwest of Italy. So the palace is a UNESCO-listed World Heritage Site, and it now houses an extensive collection of decorative art and ancient art. So collections spans from the 1st century to the 18th century, and they are displayed on a surface of 4,000 square meters over 4 floors. I make this short introduction because probably you have never visited the museum, so probably it's useful to know the context of the experience that I'm going to describe. And the institution has around 200,000 visitors per year. And even if the audience of the museum is mainly formed by people aged 35 and more, the museum has always tried to be open and connected with its audiences, both online and on-site. For instance, the museum has started its social media activity since 2010, and it has started to use several platforms and social networks. And Palazzo Madama was the first museum in Italy which opened a Pinterest account in 2011. And the museum is also an open museum because it tries to connect people also on site. So they have organized an initiative which is called I Like Palazzo Madama. So once a month, people can go to the museum and then say that they like a specific work of art, and then they can share their likes and their experience online. So this is a successful initiative that can connect social networks and people, both people on site and online. So now there is evidence that social media and digital technologies can help people connect with cultural institutions and vice versa. But there are some important questions that need to be addressed, such as, do people connect to cultural content? Can digital initiatives enhance visitors' participation? And what is the role of digital interactives for evaluation? So now I would like to try to answer to some of these questions, presenting specific case studies. So between 1861 and 1864, the palace was very important because it housed the first Senate of Italy. So in that place at that time were discussed a lot of watershed bills that had a very relevant political importance. So the building has a national relevance. And at that time, a lot of bills were discussed, and they covered different themes, such as the unification of Italy, the progressive taxation, civil rights, freedom of expression, and so on. So on the occasion of the 150th anniversary of Italy's unification, the museum did a reconstruction of the ancient Senate Hall, And contextually, the museum also organized several theater performances, hands-on activities, and other initiatives that aim to foster visitors' participation and engagement. And among these initiatives, the museum also physically reconstructed a polling booth. So people could actually enter in this polling booth and cast their vote about a selection of 19th century bills. So people could answer yes or no. So are you in favor of, for instance, a civil marriage? So using a digital interactive that was located inside in the polling booth, people could express their opinion, and they were also allowed to write comments. So the comments were projected on a screen, so people visiting the museum and the exhibition could actually read the comments that were posted by the other visitors. And a selection of these comments was also shared via social media in order to connect the participation and experience that happened on site with the online audiences. So in order to understand people's participation and level of engagement, we actually analyzed the comments that were posted by visitors, and we coded them. And over a period of around 1 year, more than 9,000 votes were collected. And as you can see, the most part of the comments of the votes were cast using the polling booth that was put online in the exhibition. Contextually, it was developed also a website, so people could actually cast their vote also online. But as you can see, the most part of the votes were cast on site. And overall, more than 2,000 comments were collected. So how did we analyze and code visitors' comments? To analyze the comments, we integrated the methods of conversation analysis with the categories mainly used to code the traditional visitors' books. So basically, we wanted to investigate their participation type. So we wanted to know what the comments were about. Then we wanted to investigate the comment type, so the length of the comment, the structure of the comment, in order to investigate the complexity of these comments. Then we wanted to investigate the interaction type, so we wanted to know the primary recipients of the messages. We wanted to understand if people actually replied to comments posted by other visitors, or they just wanted to express their opinion about something. So we wanted to evaluate if the comments projected on the screen actually fostered a conversation between visitors or not. And then we also integrated other categories in our analysis, and we adapted them from the relevant literature, which is mainly focused on visitor studies and visitors' comment. So we evaluated the type of engagement. So we tried to figure out if the engagement was cognitive, aesthetic, or emotional. Then we investigated the tone of the comments, if they were positive, negative, or neutral. This is a very common analysis, but we thought that it was anyway useful. And then we also wanted to know if the comments were referred to the past, to the present, or the future. Because one of the main goals of this initiative was to foster in participants a sort of critical reflection about the 19th century bills that were proposed. And another expectation was to encourage people to start from the past, the themes of the past, to reflect about the present and the present political situation. So here you are the results. So we found out that the most part of the comments were personal opinions and judgment, such as, I like the exhibition, I think that the volume of the audiovisuals was too loud. So they were personal comments and judgment. And I think that an interesting result is the one about the content-related comments. Comment related to the content of the exhibition or the bills were around 28%. And this percentage is not that high, but it is important because it makes evident that some people were really engaged with the exhibition and spontaneously decided to post such comments. I must add that the digital interactive didn't invite people to post comments about the exhibition or the themes that were proposed. So these are actually spontaneous comments, and I think that it's relevant that some people decided to write, okay, I agree with this thing, I think that this exhibition is important. So I think that the digital interactive was really useful to collect all the comments and to and this allowed actually to track a phenomenon, that is to say that some people really engaged with the content of the exhibition. And I think that another interesting thing is that the themes that foster a higher cognitive participation were related to current political debates. Here in the graph, you have the 9 themes that were proposed monthly to the visitors. And as you can see, there are 3 themes that foster that encouraged more comments about the content of the exhibit. And here you are some examples. So there are some comments, and then you also have some pictures. And starting from the themes of the 19th century bills, people spontaneously made connection and comparisons with social issues of our time. For instance, in the 19th century, there was a bill about the civil marriage. So the question was, do you agree with, are you in favor of civil marriage? And some people wrote this kind of comments, so spontaneously connecting civil marriage, for instance, to marriage for homosexuals. So I think this is a very important result because people spontaneously did this kind of connection. And another thing that fostered a lot of participation that was content related is the one about progressive taxation. And so here you are an example of the comments that were posted by people. Then, concerning the primary recipients of the messages, most of the comments were not related to the messages posted by other visitors. So in this way, the digital interactive was not effective in fostering conversations, but only transmission of information. And I think that the use of tags and hashtags, which is typical of social media, could have been beneficial. I must admit at that time, not so many people used Twitter or this kind of social network and platforms. So the use of these platforms and hashtags was not really integrated into the experience. But I think that if the museum would do this experience again, they would integrate this kind of social media in the experience. Then, concerning the comment type, comments were generally short. And I think that this is why participation and typing takes time. So you really need to be engaged with the experience to spend a couple of minutes or just 1 minute to type something. And I also think that the medium counts a lot, since we know that comments written through digital media are usually shorter than comments that are handwritten. So when we code comments and we analyze comments, we need to take into account also the medium that we are using. So probably if you compare these results with visitor comments written, for instance, at the end of the visit, then the results would be different. Then 94% of the comments were actually positive, confirming what the literature has already pointed out. That is to say that visitors usually express positive feelings. And I think that this percentage is very high because people were really engaged by the exhibition, so they wanted to share their positive experience. And concerning, then you can also see that the personal opinions and judgments were about. It was not possible for 81% of the comments to know what the personal comment was about, because we had expressions such as "this is very beautiful," but what does this refer to? It's difficult. So I think that context is really key for interpretation. So when you code comments, you really need to refer to the context in which the message was posted. Then the type of engagement was mainly aesthetic. So people were really impressed by the reconstruction of the Senate Hall. But nevertheless, there is some evidence that cognitive engagement took place. And I think that these results are important because now we have evidence of this phenomenon without conducting other types of evaluation. So we didn't interview people to ask if they were engaged, mentally engaged. So this is a kind of a spontaneous set of comments. And finally, the analysis of the demographics made evident that the digital initiative was effective in engaging younger audiences. As you can see, the percentages of visitors aged under 35 are higher than usual. You can see the pink bars, and you can see that usually people under 18 or between 18 and 26 are usually not very high, but the people who participated to this initiative were actually younger than expected. So this digital interactive was really effective in engaging younger audiences. So what can we learn from visitor comments? Well, we can obviously understand the visitor perceptions and experiences, but I think that the results can also be used to enhance the activities of the museum and also improve research methods. Because going through the comments, you can feel the sentiment of the comments themselves and develop new research questions that will help you better understand your audiences. Thanks.
Okay, hi. My name is Elena, and I work at Tate as digital analyst, and I am also doing a PhD at the University of Leicester. Nowadays, visitors come to the galleries and they post about their experiences on social media. We also have different digital initiatives where we encourage our visitors to tell us about it and tell us what they thought about the gallery. So what I'm going to present is a work in progress. We are trying to to see what we can do with all that data that is being generated about our galleries on social media. So I'm going to talk about the opportunities of analyzing that data as well as the challenges. Okay, so this is a visitor card that you can take in the galleries. And so you can write what you think about your visit. You put it in the box, and at Tate there is a clear defined process of what to do with that. So the visitor experience team collects all those visitor cards, they code them, analyze them, and then send a report to the whole organization. But what do we have now with online and social media? Okay, we are encouraging our visitors to tell us what they thought while they are what they are thinking while they are visiting the galleries. We also ask them, for example, here on the blog, about what they thought about an exhibition. We ask them as well on our social media profiles. And now we have some digital interactives in the gallery, where also we try to create a conversation and debate about art, and also we ask them about the visit. For example, here, my visit in 5 words. So all this is initiated by the gallery, but we also have the visitors, after their visit, going to review pages like TripAdvisor or Yelp, and leaving their comments there. And also, of course, they have their own social media platforms where they post photos and comments about their feelings, what they thought about their visit. So here an example of this bike being very popular on Instagram. This one is on display at Tate Liverpool at the moment. So the result is that we have loads and loads of data, big data. So a huge variety and rich data about their experience of our visitors. So there are some opportunities of analyzing this data. It can help us to understand the visitor experience. We can even react in real time to things we see that are being said on social media. That can even help us to create some relationship with our visitors if they tweet directly to us, or we can respond to negative comments on TripAdvisor. And that can even help us to do some predictive analytics. But there are some challenges to do this. And so these are the steps to do the analysis of this data. So I'm going to go through each of the steps and mentioning what are the challenges we are facing in this. So the first thing is that you get all this data and you get very excited and you say, okay, great, let's start analyzing it. But you have first to define your research objectives and ask yourself what is the information about our visitors we can actually get and understand from all this data. And then you define the methodology and select the tools to do that. Data collection is quite challenging. There are different platforms. The data is very different. Some social media platforms have analytics tools to extract the data, but for the majority, you either need some programming skills to do it, or you have to pay a lot of money to buy one of these expensive social media monitoring tools. And also based on these tools, there are some limitations of the data. For example, if you create a query to extract all the tweets about that mention Tate on Twitter, you would probably do it in English. But I mean, we have a lot of international visitors, so there are some limitations on how you collect the data, and also you need to compare the demographics of the people that use those social media platforms to the visitors that come to the gallery, because that varied, and also the motivations to comment about the visit. Because, for example, in the cards, there are either very negative or positive comments, and also probably topics people want to talk on Twitter. So people complain, for example, about how noisy the hand dryers are in the toilets. But that's not very sexy to talk about on Twitter. And then another thing to consider is ethics and privacy. Again, referring back to the gallery, when we do research in the galleries, it's very clear. So we have this survey, we tell them what is it for, or if we do some observation, we can put a sign in the gallery. But with social media, there are so many gray areas because, okay, it's in the public domain, but is that good enough? Okay, and then once you have the data, it's time to analyze it. Regarding methods, you have to define if you want to take a more quantitative or qualitative approach or a mixed methods one. And then regarding the tools, there are some automated ones, and then you can do a manual analysis. And each method has some pros and cons. And I will talk about it later with an example. And once you get your results, you have to find a way of presenting this complexity and report it to the organization. So at the end, action can be taken based on this, the analysis of this data. Okay, so here is an example. One of the things we are trying to understand is how the different sources of information impact on deciding or not to go to visit an exhibition. What are the most effective marketing and communication channels? So the main source of information is first the website, and second, word of mouth. Word of mouth is very important, and nowadays word of mouth is also social media. So we have currently a Paul Klee exhibition at Tate Modern, which has its own hashtag Klee. And so we can see what people are saying because we encourage them to use it, and also we can track in general what people are saying if we put a query with Klee, Tate, or Klee exhibition. So yeah, here are some examples of people that come to Tate to see the exhibition, and they tweet while they are visiting it, or they tweet after, saying if they like it or not, recommending it to their friends, etc. So far, it opened in mid-October, and we have 5,000 tweets. So as well as analyzing which tweets have been more effective from a communications point of view and trying to find these potential influencers on social media, we are trying to analyze what people are saying about the exhibition. And so far, it could not be better. People are describing it as wonderful, colorful, and inspiring, but also some complaints about how busy and crowded it is. So this is just a test, and we want to do this with several exhibitions so then we can really understand how reliable this data is and try to see what is the real impact of word of mouth and social media. And here's another example. The tanks are a new space that opened at Tate Modern last year. The tanks were the space where the oil that fueled the power station was, and they have been reconverted into gallery spaces where live art is displayed. They are huge, they are very industrial, and very raw and made of concrete. And the program was quite innovative. So we wanted to gather people's reaction in these new spaces. There was a comments wall at the entrance of and also exit of the tanks where we asked people what they thought. So they could do it with a sticker, a paper sticker, or they could do it via Twitter. If they added the hashtag the tanks, then the tweet will appear automatically projected on the wall. So we work together, the visitor experience team, the audience research manager, and the interpretation team, and me from digital, trying to understand this and also combining different methods like surveys and observations. So we coded some tweets into positive, negative, and neutral. And here are the adjectives they used to describe these spaces. Most of them were, almost 90% were positive, and people thought they were amazing and incredible. And there were some comments about how creepy the space was. And here is one of the challenges about the tools. There are nowadays increase of automated tools that say they can analyze the sentiment of what people are saying on social media. And we tried a few of them. But the thing is that the results not very good. Because, for example, if someone was saying, oh, the tanks are very dark and obscure, I love them, that will be coded by these automated sentiment analysis tools as negative because of that. And currently we have another exhibition on display at Tate Britain, which is called Art Under Attack, which are about works that have been destroyed or destroyed. As well, because of these adjectives, the tweets appear more negative than they actually are. I mean, they are not. People are enjoying it. So this is quite of a challenge because, I mean, manual coding, of course, is very time-consuming. But it was better to do a sample, an analysis of some tweets than using these tools. And then as well, this also allowed us to not only understand the sentiment, but also see what people were talking about. So the three main themes were, first, the spaces themselves. So there were a lot of comments about the space because it is quite unique. Then the art on display, the program. And finally, the Twitter wall and the comments wall itself. People were taking pictures of their stickers or of the tweets and tweeting about it. And what was interesting as well is that we compared this data from these different methods we were using it. And it was quite interesting because it matched a lot what came from the surveys and what people were saying on Twitter. But this is just one case study, so we need to continue trying. So this is another example we are going to work on. Tate Britain has reopened, and we want to see, I mean, the collection has been reorganized, and there have been many changes, so we want to see the before and after the reopening. So it opened this week, and this is the peak in tweets, and there were over 2,000 tweets of people talking about the new Tate Britain. And just some final thoughts about all this. So social media data is just one part of all the data we have about our visitors, because we have web analytics, we have information from our surveys in the gallery, as well as on online surveys we do. We have information from the online shop, from ticketing sales. So how do you put all this together and mix them and to analyze it and maybe get patterns and understand better the whole visitor experience? And then another thing is about data analysis skills. This is from the Horizon report that has been just published this week, which says that there is an increased need of data literacy within the whole museum sector. So how do you approach this? And there is basically a need for training and guidance for different departments to be able to analyze the data. And finally, after collecting, analyzing, and making decisions based on this data, as a research institution that we are, we also wonder what to do after all this. Should we archive it? Because we do sometimes with other material that has been produced around an exhibition. So now with digital, I mean, there's some value of those tweets. For example, for the tanks, maybe someone in 20 years would like to analyze what were the first impressions of people, you know, when those spaces opened. So just a final thought of how you archive and conserve that data. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you very much to everybody. Are there questions on the floor? Any pressing questions right now? Yes.
Hi, I would have two questions, one for Elena and another one for Irene.
You mean these categories, right?
Engagement, yeah, there it is. Yeah. Thank you.
Sorry. Anyway, in order to define those categories, I used a report that was edited by the Smithsonian Center for Evaluation. And so they did a study about an exhibition, and they found these three categories. So like it was cognitive, aesthetic, and emotional. And in this selection, I also added a reflective category. And with this category, I would like to define a comment that actually reflect how a person has interpreted the content. So it was not like an emotional comment, but something that was more reflexive, actually. But if you're interested in a deeper definition of these categories, I can email to you the references to the report, so you can actually see more examples, and you can try to find out if these categories can fit, for example, to what you are analyzing.
Thank you very much.
I don't know if I have answered to your question.
Thank
you.
you very much. And the short question I have for you, Elena, would be, could you please give us the information about that, the final report that you said that we have to increase data literacy?
It's the Horizon report. It has been published, and there is actually a session. I don't know.
It's on Saturday.
I think it's on Saturday. They are doing like the official publication, but you can download it. It's already available on the Horizon website. That's okay.
It's on the session at 9:30 on Saturday, Grand Salon C. Yes.
I just wanted to ask Sheila if you've started cataloging feedback messages you're getting through Facebook and Twitter, as well as your feedback form.
Short answer is no. We don't. Well, we do in a way have access to those because we've started. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. We have started following all our museum members on social media, and we do have access to a system that gathers all those for us. So I hadn't thought about doing that, but it would be useful, I think, or interesting, especially for newly launched exhibits where we might find people commenting on it. And you've just given me more work, because I already was thinking that it would be very interesting to go back and look at the community memories messages to compare, because just from seeing the community memories exhibit messages that come in, I think we'll find that there's a much larger proportion of those people that share stories, because a lot of people write in and say, oh, you know, that's my great-grandfather, and they'll tell you a story about the day that photo was taken, which is actually really fascinating if we can find a way to help museums incorporate those in the exhibits. But yeah, it'd be interesting to look at the social media as well. But yes, thanks for more work.
Yeah, it would be interesting to compare the results through the different feedback mechanisms and see if the sentiment is different. Because I always think, you know, someone commenting publicly is probably going to be different than someone sending you a direct message, whether that's email or.
Yes, well, even we do notice that there are some messages, most of the messages that come in, people sign. So you know they're taking ownership of what they say. There are some messages that I was saying earlier that we get some that are just a one-liner. I think it might be a student saying, you suck, or this is boring, but my teacher will love it. And they don't generally sign those. And I doubt that if they had access to Twitter, they probably wouldn't tweet them either, but maybe they would. It's a good point.
I think there might be different motivations for people to use social media. I mean, what you want to tell your friends that about your visit compared to what you want to say directly, even to the institution. So, yeah, I think the medium really affects the type of comments and yeah, it's like the visitor card. You're not going to talk about the toilets on Twitter because it's not cool. And also, I mean, another example is the comments on the Twitter wall, because I mean you had the stickers and you have the tweets, and it was kind of a different experience. And even if it was the same questions, there were quite a difference in, I mean, just a basic thing you can draw on paper, but you cannot do it using Twitter. And also another interesting thing is that with stickers, people were like pointing to others' comments, so kind of conversation was easy to be created. While for the tweets, because there were only 3 at the same time on the wall, it was more complicated to respond to each other.
So in our experience, the comments were all public. So as you probably have seen in the graphics, some were content related and others. I mean, the percentage of the so-called graffiti, like "I love you" or "hurrah" or something like that, was not that high. Probably if you use other spaces, probably you will be writing different things. So I agree with the other speakers. So the medium really counts, and also the context in which you are actually writing the messages.
Well, I also have a question. I guess it's a question, thinking to the speakers, but also a question to the public. Sheila talked about 10 years plus data being gathered. Was that the first time that this data has been analyzed? Or, well, I guess then my question goes a little bit longer. Maybe everybody can respond, and then hopefully the public also. And then, well, Irene presented a specific project on how to interact with the public and how to gather data. But will that be then incorporated into the general activity so that the museum continues to get that feedback from the public? And then I think Elena is in a very special situation because there's her position was new. It's data analyst for social media. I mean, very few institutions have the luxury of having a whole staff devoted to these sort of evaluating activities, I guess. So my question is to the speakers and then to the audience: what is your experience in trying to get your attention from the institution to allocate the resources to embed this evaluating practice into your daily work? Yes.
Basically, we did do a previous analysis of this feedback from 2001 to 2005, and I really just kept reminding management that there's a lot of valuable information in here, and it would be worth going back to look at what was in there, see if it's changed, see if any recommendations could come out of it. So it was really a matter of making it clear that it wasn't just a whim or a pet project, that there'd be something to come out of it. And I have presented it within Chin, and they're hoping that I will publish something that our members can use to come out of this project. So it was really just being able to present a case to management that it would be worth doing.
So I did the analysis of the comments on a project base, but I know that the museum usually monitors visitors' participation. So they analyze both the comments written on visitors' books, which are located at the end, at the exit of the museum, and they also monitors the participation via social media, both on Facebook and Twitter. So they probably don't code all the comments, but they usually monitor the kind of conversation, because they're an institution which listen to its visitors, so they try to engage conversations, especially on Twitter. So they have a person who usually manages social media, and she incorporates the evaluation activity in her duties, even if this kind of work is not done probably systematically, so they don't do a coding, but as I said, they listen to visitors.
Including evaluation in the decision-making process sometimes can be hard. But I think, my position was created because there was more and more the need of evaluating, because there's a huge investment in technology. I mean, an app, a website costs a lot of money, and you need to see where we don't have so many resources, so you need to see what is really working. And we are also becoming, there's an audience research manager at Tate, and she has done a really good job in trying to create an audience research-led mind across the organization, and creating segments that people talk about. So we have to do the same online, because we have 1.5 million visitors a month to the website, and we want to serve them really well. So there's not the same the person that comes to read a research paper, or someone who comes to just check the opening times and how we do this segmentation, so we can provide the best products or the best services for those audiences. So it's changing, sometimes a bit slowly, but we are more and more using research and evaluation in digital production. So for example, now we are changing the search box on the website, and we are looking at what people are actually searching, so we can provide good results. And when we did, for example, the mobile version of the website, we also looked at visits from mobile devices, what they are visiting, what they are searching, what is the user journey on the website. So that helped to inform the menu on the mobile side, and how best to provide that information.
And from the audience, will somebody like to share your experiences? Do you guys do evaluation on these social media activities or online activities? No.
We do a ton. Yeah, I'm from the Portland Museum of Art in Portland, Maine, and we have a person dedicated to social media, among other things, but I'd say about 50% of her job is social media, and then the metrics from social media. And it's become valuable. And the more we can report on it, the more support we'll get for those initiatives. So it's critical to how we work as a marketing department.
Somebody else does analysis of online? Yeah.
I found I'm from the Art Gallery of Ontario, and I am a one-person social media team, and I feel part of my struggle is convincing people that feedback we get digitally is as meaningful and as valuable as other means. So we had an incident about a year ago where there was a really a big event we were holding. It was really high profile, and tickets went on sale, and our website crashed. And we received
So the argument is still, you're trying still to argue that the online is not just a virtual avatar, but it's actually a very real person, with relation with the museum. Yeah.
And for sure it's a resource issue as well, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Somebody else has a yes.
I have from the State Historical Museum, which is in Moscow, Russia, and we started using social media 3 years ago, but we don't do any innovation, unfortunately. And my question is, from what we can start?
Yes, well, that was great that you made that point, because actually that would be my next question. From you guys' experience, who did you learn from? Did you have an institution that will show you? Did you have to sort of self-learn, or the other examples of you guys that shared? How do you go about this? I mean, is there an institution that you can go to, or what are the for institutions that want to start going about this? How do you have tips and tricks?
Okay, maybe what I will do is to start doing kind of an audit of, your digital activities and the tools you have to evaluate each one. And then, the main thing is to define your objectives of what you want to achieve with social media, and based on that, just select 5 metrics you want to measure on regular basis. Because with this, there's the problem. It's you have so much data you can analyze, and even Facebook, you can download the Facebook Insights, and you have tons of data. But just focus on a few and track them, and try to compare to similar organizations, so you know what is more or less normal. Do some benchmarking of your activity, and then being consistent on analyzing that metrics over time.
Yes, I think that benchmarking is very important, but one of the problems is that many institutions don't share their results. So sometimes it's very difficult to know if you are doing well or not. So I think that sharing a cultural evaluation would be very good among institutions. And sometimes institutions don't share results because they think that probably they are not doing well, so they want to be judged by other people. But I think that it's a pity, because if you share your results, then you can compare, you have benchmarking, and you construct a huge database of data. But I think that it depends on the countries. In Italy, Palazzo Madama was one of the first museums that used social media. When we analyzed the comments, not only these comments, but also the comments that were posted via Facebook and Twitter, we did a kind of experimentation. So when I cooperated with the Palace, the Facebook analytics were not so complete, so you couldn't analyze the comments automatically according to the presence of a photograph, etc. Now you can do it almost automatically, but at the time it was not possible. So we decided to understand if the posts with photos were more successful, etc. So we did a kind of experimentation, and at the time there were not many institutions that did this kind of job, so it was difficult to share results to know if we were doing well or not. But I agree with Elena that data are there, but they need interpretation. So you need good research questions, and you can start from the quantitative analysis, just showing how many comments you have, how many replies and interactions. But then if you want to get deeper, then you need to have a research questions. You need to know what you want to investigate, and then code the data according to your question.
I was just going to say, from a very quantitative and statistical point of view, last year, last year there was a report published in Canada by a research institute that looked at provincial governments across Canada and how effectively they were using social media. And I found that interesting, although it wasn't on the cultural sphere, it was interesting just to see what they considered were metrics. So it was like you got a different rating depending on how many times there were tweets being made in a week. And so that was really looking at this perspective of how effective, in this case, governments were using their social media. But then I would definitely combine that with a qualitative approach and say, well, it's not just about how many times they tweet, but how effective is that? So.
Well, I think there's a room for one last question. Is there somebody else that has a? Well, then we're just ending with a couple minutes before time. So I just wanted to thank the panel and everybody here for your questions and your participation. And I hope you continue enjoying the conference. Thank you.
Thank you.